Welcome to OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This podcast offers hope to many people who needlessly suffer from mental health issues. Your host, Bob Adelman, brings you information on how you can recover from any mental health issue and achieve a happier life. Each episode interviews experts like doctors, counselors, and life artists who give helpful tips on living a happier life. But most importantly, Bob interviews ordinary people who have suffered with a mental health issue, some on the brink of or attempted to take their own lives. Each one has recovered to lead a much happier life. Most of the guests have books or websites with more info that you can use for recovery. You can do it too. If you want to know more, please check out his trailer. Bob's notes on today's show follows.
Today we talk with Ann Hince, who wrote the book Pathway to Insight, and talks about the emotional freedom technique or tapping and how it battles the beast inside at the final layer. But this comes with the following warning. It is critical to comprehend the complexities of the approach, therefore, it is prudent to seek the assistance of a skilled therapist. It's also worth noting that issues that have been unresolved for a long period take longer to settle than other concerns. The interview took place maybe a year ago. The reason I waited so long is because I tried it myself and it caused overwhelming feelings, and I had to back off. It appears to work well for those with PTSD alone. Others with more chemically based depression should wait until they're stable and then seek the aid of a therapist or psychiatrist. Also, it's likely that tapping may become a compulsive behavior if you have obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's important to realize that the emotional freedom technique is not a miracle technique. This, like any other therapeutic treatment, is likely to take some time before any noticeable results may be seen. The state of the condition will progressively improve. That being said, I believe that this method shows promise for people who suffer from PTSD and perhaps will help anyone who is ready to face the beast at the final layer and be on the pathway to peace.
Now, here's Bob with today's show.
Hello, Ann. How are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Could you tell a listener a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I actually have a mid-Atlantic accent. So I was born in England, but I've lived in California for 33 years now. And I'm a mum of 2 boys, and I have written a book, and I am sharing my story.
That's terrific. I'm very interested in what you had to say. I looked at some of your videos on YouTube. They were extremely interesting. Could you explain these techniques to everyone?
Sure. Well, I'll explain them as I explain my story. So I had a lot of trauma. I think a lot of people probably most people who listen to this podcast probably did in childhood. So I was actually born with my right foot up against my right shin. So the first 6 weeks of my life, I had physical therapy. And then I was adopted into a family that had just suffered a trauma because the little girl that they had adopted at 6 months, the birth mother changed her mind. So they took this little girl back, and I was the replacement for her. So that was I'm sure that was traumatic for my parents and my brother, my brother who had been adopted into the family 2 years previously from a different family. They wouldn't know whether they could believe or trust that I was going to stay in the family or not. So for that first 6 months, they were probably not really wanting to connect too much just in case they got hurt again.
Right. I see what you're saying. So tell us about techniques that you have started or that you have been using for, I guess, a couple of years now?
Okay, quite a few years now, yes. So I stored all this trauma inside of me, and I didn't know that I had all that trauma stored inside of me. So it was in my late 30s. I actually went to a doctor's appointment, and the doctor asked me how stressed I was. And I said I was an 8 out of 10, and then he asked me why. And I knew at that point that it was the big trauma of when I was 19 and woke up one morning and found my mother dead in the bathroom.
Oh, my God.
So the tears from that event, which were now 2 decades earlier, were still just under the surface. So he used this technique with me. The first technique I used, which is called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique, and it's also called tapping. He used it with me for about 15 minutes, and we tapped about finding my mother. And I walked away from that appointment being able to tell the story in my mind without the tears there anymore. And it felt like such a shift that I knew there was something to this technique. But I wanted to know for sure, right? I have an engineering background. I like to know things work before I spend time doing them.
Right.
So I had a 17-year-old cat at home at the time, and we'd just been told he needed to have a daily saline shot, like an injection. And the first time I did that, my hand was shaking so much because I was so afraid of screwing up, of doing something wrong, of hurting my cat. And my hand was just shaking uncontrollably. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it every day, but I had just learned this technique. Right? I learned it online because it was given away for free by the person who developed it. So I learned how to do it. And I thought, well, this is a great test case. So I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat, my fear of giving an injection, and my history, my memories around injections, because I've had a lot. And the next day when I gave him the shot, the needle just slid right in. There was absolutely no fear, no shaking of my hand whatsoever. So that's when I realized how, it's a deceptively powerful technique. So what it is, it's a little bit like acupressure, and that we're tapping on specific places in the body, which are the ends of certain meridians in the body, some energy channels in the body. We're tapping on those as we're thinking about something that has emotion inside of us for it. So it might be something's happening right now, right? If we're feeling traumatized right now, we've already got that in the body and we can just tap on the points. But I wanted to go back and clear out my history. So I not only used it daily and tapped when I noticed myself feeling emotional about something, but I wrote down every emotional trauma, every emotional memory that I could think of from my childhood, actually from my whole life prior to that, for the first 40 years or so. And I tapped through one each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night. And I found my mind becoming quiet, which is what I wanted. I wanted inner peace. That's what I was after. And I found it happening. And it was really amazing to actually experience a mind, to go from one, of having a mind that was always talking, always judging, always negative mostly, to have that voice kind of disappear and actually have it be quiet was just an amazing experience to go from one to the other.
Right. So could you explain the tapping?
Yeah. So what we do is actually what the doctor did with me. You ask yourself when you're thinking about some event, what we do is we're kind of bringing the emotion into the body. So if we're feeling something right now, and if we're listening to the news right now, we've probably got some emotion. If we think about it, there's probably some emotion there. So we use the words to keep the emotion in the body. So with tap on the first point is the karate chop point on the side of the hand, like where you would hit it down to do a karate chop. You tap on that like 5 to 7 times. You tap firmly, but you don't want to hurt yourself. But you just don't want to tap too gently that it's not doing anything. You're actually trying to create an energetic interrupt into the nervous system of the body as you're feeling the emotion or thinking the thought. So you tap and you kind of do an opening statement. So like, even though I'm feeling scared, that's my truth in this moment, and it's okay that I'm feeling scared.
Okay.
And you say that 3 times. So even though I'm feeling scared, you just say that 3 times. And then you start with the different points. And the first point is the crown point on the top of the head. And again, you tap there and you say just a short thing like, maybe I'm feeling scared. The news is scaring me.
Okay.
And then the next point is the beginning of the eyebrows. I'm feeling scared. The next point is the bone on the edge of the eye. I'm feeling scared. The next point is the bone under the eye. I'm feeling scared. The next point is the upper lip under the nose. I'm feeling scared. The next point is the chin. I'm feeling scared. The next point is the collarbone point. I'm feeling scared. And then the last point is about 4 inches under the armpit. I'm feeling scared. That's one round. And then you take a deep breath, you let it out, and then you think about it again. So if I give myself something on a scale of 0 through 10 and it was an 8, has it shifted now? Is it maybe a 7? Or has it gone down more rapidly? Is it a 5? And then you do it again. And you do it again and again until it's down to a 0, 1, or 2. Now, it may go up at some point, right? If it goes up, it means you've actually probably thought something else or felt something else. And that's what it does. It kind of opens up the subconscious mind. So when I was tapping about my mother's death, that first time with the doctor, it was kind of just like a surface level, a surface layer of emotion that we let go of. But like over the next few days and weeks, more memories came up as I kind of opened it up, kind of opening a Pandora's box almost. So more details of the event came to mind, and then I would tap on those until it just becomes a story and it no longer has any emotional charge around it.
Wow. The problem I've always had in the past is when I start thinking about my fear, my performance anxiety fears, they overwhelm me. And I mean, I can't seem to get the fear to stop.
Right. And it does to begin with, it feels like maybe those emotions are going to annihilate us because it's so scary. But if you have an experience like I did with my cat, right, I knew that there was freedom on the other side. And I also had come to the understanding that these emotions, it's just energy that's stuck in the body and it wants to leave. We've just not allowed it to. We've held it in. And so it's just inside of us because the memories aren't anywhere else. They're not outside of us. The memories are living inside of us as this stuck energy. So freedom really is on the other side. And, you know, it's good to have experience. So you could try working with this technique with something more simple, like I did with my cat, to know that you can actually get to the other side and that there is freedom there.
Okay. What happens to me is it seems to all go into the middle of my chest. I always felt the anxiety right in the middle of my chest. So in your situation, would I tap on my chest or?
No, you always use the same points when we're tapping. So if you were using EFT, you would actually move that into words. So you would say, even though I feel this anxiety in my chest, that's my truth in this moment. It's okay that I feel that.
Okay.
Now, you have a deeper level of awareness. So when I started out, I didn't know where I felt any of these emotions. I just knew that the emotions were there. So EFT is really good at the beginning stages when someone has suppressed so much that they can't even feel, right? They don't know where that anxiety is, right? So after I had done EFT on all my childhood stuff and I became aware of those physical sensations, right? Because every emotion, we use the words sadness or anger or frustration, but what we're really talking about is a set of physical sensations, right? If we're feeling angry, we might be holding our stomach tight. We might be holding our jaws and our fists tight. And we're saying, I'm angry. But this kind of reverses that process. We actually become aware of those physical sensations. And once I didn't feel like I needed to use EFT as much. It didn't feel as direct. So I was actually in a group at the time, and the man in the group, we were studying A Course in Miracles, and he said every week, you don't have to meditate. It's all about feeling your feelings. But when I was in this group, it's when I started tapping. So I didn't know what my feelings were. But as the weeks went by, and he said this every week, I thought I would actually try and feel my feelings once I became aware of them. So I'll explain it, and then maybe we'll walk it through with you and see what you experience. So I was actually doing this when I was at the kitchen sink. So I would think a thought or recognize that I was thinking a thought that had emotion behind it. Maybe it was jealousy or something like that. And I wanted to feel those sensations. So I could feel that in my body. I could feel where it was. And I knew I had to try and feel those feelings to allow them to be. So I recognized that if I kept moving or if I took another breath, I could no longer focus on those feelings. They would kind of move away because they were so used to being suppressed. So what I had to do is actually hold myself like a statue. Once I could put my focus on that tension in the body, I would stop breathing right there. I wouldn't take another breath. I would just stop when I was focusing on that feeling. And I would hold myself like a statue. And I would just talk to the tension. So, I would say things like, it's okay. I can feel you right there. I can feel the tension right there. And I'm just going to allow you to be. I'm not going to try and change you. I don't want you to go or do anything else. I just want you to be there and express yourself. And then eventually I would have to take a deep breath. And along with the deep breath would be a shift. The shift might happen first, and then I would take a deep breath, or the other way around. But there would be a release of the tension. And then I would think the thought again and do the same thing. And I would do it over and over again with the same thought until the thought no longer had the tension associated with it. And that's the freedom. Then there's freedom.
The problem when I did try it, it always makes it worse. Like when I sit with my fear, which is mostly performance anxiety, I sit with my fear and I try to fight it, and it gets worse and worse.
You tried to fight it? Is that what you said?
Well, yeah, I try to somehow overcome it.
Okay, that's not what's happening. We're not trying to overcome it. We're actually just trying to allow it. We're trying to just feel it and allow it to be without trying to change it. We just want it to be felt. It wants to be understood and accepted. So as soon as there is full, complete acceptance, that's when the shift happens.
Okay. I don't think I have that acceptance because when I get it, I feel really bad, not just in that one area, but throughout my body. I start to get really weak, almost like passing out. It's almost like, the whole body is just affected and the mind is affected. And every time I try to go through it, like you said, it stops me and gets worse. So that's when I try to cover it up. It
sometimes can feel like it's getting worse as we're releasing the layers. But what we're actually doing is getting to the layer underneath. And as you do it more and more, you're actually able to pinpoint it more and more. And it will eventually, you'll be able to pinpoint it so that it is one particular place, probably in the connective tissue. That's what I've realized over the years, that I can actually put my awareness in the connective tissue, and that's where we're holding the tension. But once you can pinpoint it, then you can hold your awareness on that over and over again, and it will dissipate. Each time you do it dissipates a little bit more until eventually it's no longer there.
Well, I am going to try it, but I'm a little, scared that it'll put me into a deeper depression, and that's what happens sometimes. I actually go into a deeper depression. I always cover up. That's all I'm used to doing is trying to think about things other than those dark places that I go to. So when I go to this dark place, it just seems to consume me and make me worse.
I got to a lot of dark places too in my life. And, I realized that, as I said, it is stuck energy in the body. It wants to be accepted. So once I'd done a lot of this tapping work, this EFT work, I actually got to the deeper places and I tapped about, I hate myself. I tapped with those words for probably several hours over days, weeks. I don't remember exactly what it was, until that no longer had any emotion behind it, right? They're just words. I hate myself. But people say you shouldn't say that to yourself. But if I was saying that to myself and I could then accept it, then it loses all of its power.
Okay.
So if I was working with EFT, I would tap on, I feel so depressed. And I would do that over and over and over again until it no longer feels the same way.
Okay, so you never got to a situation where it got so bad you had to stop?
No, because I had that experience of knowing that freedom was on the other side. So it pushed me on. I wanted to get to that freedom.
Okay. Yeah. I wind up stopping and then do all sorts of cover-ups, I make chaos of my life. I work intensely on the computer. I'm an IT person as well. I read that you work in computer science.
Yes.
But I use all these tools to not feel this way. And what you're saying is, stop that. You're now going to feel this way, and you're going to take it kind of no matter how bad it gets. I mean, where's the point where it may do more damage than good is what I'm thinking.
I imagine there are people who could go that deep, and there are EFT practitioners that you could work with, right, that would help you. But I do think it's good to have some examples. So work at not the really, really deep levels, work at more the surface levels with easy things that are happening. I'm frustrated because I can't open jars, or, my door is squeaking, something like that. And just recognize that there's freedom on the other side, right? That you can let go of it, and then start working at some of the deeper levels. Once you've got experience and you know that it actually does shift. The thing about, there are many techniques out there. What I've recognized, right, because after doing this feeling your feeling technique, I actually started to be able to put my awareness inside my body, right? So then I could work at a deeper level. I could work at the level of tension in the connective tissue, right? So I at this point, I can put my awareness inside the bones, inside my skull. My skull bones have shifted. They come more into...
What do you mean by awareness exactly? I'm not understanding that, I think.
can feel, right? So you're at the level where you can feel the tension inside in your chest, yes?
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yes.
And that's a deeper level than just knowing the words that you feel anxious or anxiety.
Okay.
Right?
All
So
right.
you're kind of in that mid level, but there's a deeper level still, right? So imagine you have a toothache or a stomachache, right? You can tell where in your body that pain is coming from. Yes? You're aware of it, right? Once that pain has gone, you can no longer pinpoint with your mind or your awareness where that pain was coming from. Yeah?
Right.
So I realized that I could keep my awareness inside once the tension had dissipated. I know it's weird. I'd never heard of anyone talk about this before. That's part of the reason I'm sharing my story. So that is
very
a
interesting.
deep level of awareness. So I know, without any question in my mind, that this work changes us at a deep physical level. And at each level that I've gone through, at each step, it's all been about accepting how I feel. So accepting the emotions that I'm feeling. And if I'm hating, that's fine. I just want to accept it. And the EFT does that. That's what the tapping does.
Yeah.
It's accepting that feeling.
I think my deepest feelings go back to my nuclear family, where I just got totally ignored all the time. So what happened was I developed a very high anxiety about talking, just in a group especially. And that's the kind of anxiety I get when I go through these problems. When I just feel anxiety, a lot of times I relate it to, I have to go do the show today, or I have to make pancakes, anything. will cause it to jump. And once it jumps and it gets to a bad level, it's hard for me to get out of that level. So you're
Right.
saying to start with something simpler first before you go into the deep, really deep, dark
if
areas.
you don't feel comfortable doing it. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to get to that deep level, these deep levels pretty quickly. But, every memory that we have like that has many different aspects. So if you were working with EFT, there's all sorts of parts of that story that you could tap on. Yes, it is good to start on something simpler, but even a story like you were just sharing has many different aspects to it, and you could start on just part of the story. So you could tap about something like, I was left alone, or I was ignored, right? So the words would be something like, even though I was ignored as a child, that's my truth in this moment, and it's okay that I feel that way. And you would just tap through that, right? It doesn't have as much emotion around it, but it's part of the story, and it would start loosening things up. And then as more memories come up, or as a different thought came up, then you could move on to that one. Yeah, so we don't have to go right into the depth straight away.
I had a very dominating brother, and he would be always putting me down every second of the day. And I carried that into my adulthood, where I'm always saying to myself, you can't do it. There's no way you can drive a car. There's no way you can do the podcast. There's no way you can do anything. You just have to sit there and be still and do nothing.
So those words that you just used then, those are the kind of things that I would write down. I would tap on those words and accept it, right? So your brother said it to you, and now you replay it in your mind. So those words, I can't do it, those have a real tension inside of you, right? They got a neural pathway. They've got a neural pathway that's very solid. So I would tap and accept that phrase, right? We don't want to. We don't think we should be saying that to ourselves. But if I tapped on, I can't do it, over and over and over again until there was no charge left behind it, then that's what I found, that those voices, those words would disappear from my mind. Wow,
that makes sense. I'm looking forward to trying it. I just had a million situations where people told me that I couldn't do things. And so, like I said, I carried that over. And what happens is a tremendous fear. It doesn't stop me from doing what I want to do, because I'm stubborn, so I do it anyway. But what it does is it makes me feel really on edge and nervous, and a terrible feeling of hopelessness.
Right. So all those words you're using there, so that's what I wrote down. So I wrote down, like, I'm afraid. I wrote down all my buttons, anything that I would react about. I wrote down all my fears. So everything I'm afraid of talking out loud. I'm afraid of recording my podcast. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. And I would tap through each of those, because that would let all that stored emotion. There's so much stored tension inside of us from all these things. It's the burden that we carry. And as we let go of them, we actually feel lighter, because we're releasing that load, and life actually becomes more fun.
And I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to face my fears and go through the other side. But like I said, every time I got to the really dark stuff, it overwhelmed me and I couldn't do anything else.
Well, hopefully just understanding that it's just stuck energy, and it's only inside of us. That, to me, that helped me, because, now that I can actually sense inside my body, I know that what we're doing is we're really opening up wounds inside of us, and we're clearing them out. And those wounds are physical. They're stored physically in our body. So it's actually releasing dis-ease in the body. So it's absolutely worth doing.
Okay. I will definitely do it. You have written a couple of books on the subject?
Just one.
Could you go over those?
Yeah, my book is called A Pathway to Insight, and it's just what we've been talking about. It's my understanding of how we store all this in childhood, how we get programmed in childhood and we just replay things over and over again. The same feelings get replayed over and over again. And then the steps that I took to unwind. So let go of this burden. So the first step is the EFT, which I explain in detail. Then feeling your feelings.
I'm sorry. One thing, ADHD, they interrupt. But, do you have any websites that you would like to promote?
My website is annhince.com. Yes,
okay.
On there you can see the X-rays of the ones I had in 2013 and then the ones I had last year to show how this work has changed the bone structure. So it's working at a deep physical level.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I encourage people to go out and look at this and check out the book as well and see what is out there. I'm going to try it. I'll let you guys know how it goes. But I'm literally very afraid. I'm afraid to feel it. And what we talk about on the show a lot is how people cover up. So this feeling that's really bad, I cover it up with trauma, with negativeness, with yelling. I think they're all cover-ups. So other people, they cut themselves, they drink alcohol, they have all the holics, you know. They take drugs. All of it's to cover this, I think. What we're talking about right now. Right. They're going to cover it and say they're okay. You know, just give me 5 drinks and I'll be fine. And so this fits in nicely as far as what the next step is after you say, no more. I'm not going to take drugs. I'm not going to do alcohol. I'm not going to gamble. I'm not going to be a sexaholic. I'm going to stop and address the core problems. Yeah. And I'm glad I caught up with you and got such valuable information. So all the techniques on tapping is in that first book, right?
It's in the book and on my YouTube channel. I've got a demonstration on how to do EFT and a demonstration on how to do feeling your feelings.
Okay. So check out her YouTube channel. You've been a great guest. Is there anything else you would like to tell the audience at this point?
Just that, there's so much more to life than we realize when we start this journey. There's so much depth to life that I didn't know existed before 10, 15 years ago. And I really appreciate now. And I know you can all do that too. I'm no different from anyone else. That there's just more to life and you can find it.
Yeah, you offer a lot of hope. I hope some of the listeners, there is a danger of feeling worse like I did. But like you said, start with something very small and don't do anything really deep at first. I'll keep trying it and see what happens.
Well, the place to start with what you just said, right? I would start with, even though I'm afraid to look inside or I'm afraid to look at my history, right? That's the fear there. That's the top level fear. And once you tap with that, then you become more willing to actually look inside.
I'm actually afraid of being afraid. I think that's really the problem, mostly. I'm afraid that I won't feel good because I'm afraid, and I feel bad. So it was great having you on the show. You're an excellent guest, and you explained everything so well. I hope everybody listens and checks out your books to help themselves further with this. And I don't know is there a lot of doctors out there that practice this? Where can people go if they want to?
There aren't many doctors. Somebody? Mine was a holistic physician, but there certainly are many EFT practitioners that can help.
Okay, so try to find an EFT practitioner.
Yes.
Is this related to EMDR at all?
It is similar to EMDR, but it's easier to do on your own than EMDR. You need to have a practitioner, I believe, to do EMDR, but you can do EFT on your own.
And especially for those that have PTSD, I think it's very useful for that as well.
Yeah, I certainly had PTSD from my dad's alcoholism and anger issues.
Mm-hmm.
So yes,
Right.
I used to be very jumpy, very reactionary, and now I'm actually pretty calm.
I'm so glad that you're feeling better, and I'll try it, and maybe some of our listeners, but I can't promote it. Don't come back to me and say, it's not working or anything. But I think if you take it slowly and you don't do anything really dark at first, I think it probably will. I'm hoping it'll work. It works for Ann. She's proven it. So it probably could work for other people.
Yeah, and there are thousands and thousands of videos online about how to use EFT. It's actually quite well known.
Terrific. All right. Thanks again for being on the show, and have a very good day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.